I'm the one that's honored to be here. I've never actually been in this building. I used to live on Minna Street, so I love coming back to the South Market area. And again, I'm honored to be the opening of these readings that will happen apparently every 2 weeks. Maybe that'll be cleared up for you, and someone will say something about that, or there'll be a schedule. But I got May Day, so there you go. So that's why I'm wearing the red and black today, and we're going to celebrate International Workers' Day, but we're going to come to it through a kind of a spiral process. Now, a couple things that Josh said. The introduction's taking a little long here. I know we want to get to literature, baby, and we're going to have the oral language part of it too, loud and clear. But just a few preparatory notes. The point about diversity, I'm going to check on that one, and that's what you're going to see today. Is again, not reading one book, but many. In fact, 9. 9 books, because that's my favorite number. And I made a movie called Tribulation 99, and I happen to have 9 pairs of glasses. So I wanted to form some kind of structure to this reading. So I said, well, 9 fragments. May Day manifestos, maybe not. Maybe May Day manifestos. Through 9 glasses, okay? Because my glasses are broken. So this brings us back to fragments. So I'm not reading one thing, but many things. And there are fragments, and part of the fragmented culture we live in. But then again, the flip side of that is diversity, which we're having and celebrating right now. Diversity of literary modes and approaches. One other thing that Josh said is about the idea about the me being a filmmaker. I am, but it's a tough task, you know, and I've made my share, but I'm also interested in curating. And this happens at ATA Gallery. I just a shout out for those guys. Other Cinema is the name of my project. So that reflects on this idea of, again, the optics and the light through glass kind of idea that will come up. The recombinatory, finally, and that's what this is. I happen to be a filmmaker who's less interested in verite, so to speak, that is to say, just flying the wall, trying to capture something, more in this idea of taking a bunch of objects, heterogeneous, polymorphous, multifarious objects, and putting them together into a new whole. That's what we might mean by recombinatory, and that's certainly what's happening right now. So, in other words, you can create the puzzle for yourself. Or not, but I'm here to create a little cognitive dissonance. By opening up these spaces of these 9 maybe May Day manifestos, then you can combine them in any way you want, of course. And I invite you to do that, and there'll be a little Q&A at the end, okay? So this whole thing will go for about just 20 minutes or so. I'm a little lost as to the time. Again, this introduction's taken up maybe too much. So, it's over. No. Okay, so I'm going to start right now. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting, like I say, I took it. By the way, my book section is there, you know, and I could read from that or any others. But I'm donating these, Josh. Okay. I'm donating 9 more books, the library of particular significance, right now. So as I'm fondling these books, because they love to be held. No, they're bound to be held, that's for sure. While I'm fondling these books, I happen to notice a fantastic spiral structure here. So that's what we're maybe trying to recreate here, if I can remember all that. Now we're starting with the arc or rainbow, which is joining the diversity of everybody here. And from the idea is, what part of this book do I read? I say, more formal, sort of a parameter, so to speak. And I said, well, I'll just read the first paragraph of the introduction from these books, and that will represent some kind of quintessence. Now, here goes. The Universe, Don Goldsmith. Phaedrus remembered a line from Thoreau. You never gain something but that you lose something. And now he began to see for the first time the unbelievable magnitude of what man, when he gained power to understand and rule the world in terms of dialectical truths, had lost. He had built empires of scientific capability to manipulate the phenomenon of nature into enormous manifestations of his own dreams of power and wealth, but not for this he had exchanged an empire of equal magnitude, an understanding of what it is to be part of the world and not an enemy of it. So that's my keynote address there in terms of course it's appropriate for the understanding this idea of diversity and recombination. This next piece, the American heritage. Oh, I'm supposed to write these things down. Okay, and exchange glasses. So now you see it really is a performance. So I've been working hard for you guys. Look, all right. So now, so if we just go, we'll go to the universe, okay? Pardon my shorthand. All right, there should be 9 here, and they will go into a spiral that will start right there. During eons of geological time, totaling perhaps 500 million years, lighter kinds of rock in the Earth's cooling crust were buoyed up by the denser materials below and became fused in a rigid block known as the Canadian Shield, which is now the hard core of North America. This platform of very ancient rock underlies northern and eastern Canada and reaches down beneath Lake Superior to bolster Wisconsin and Minnesota. Anchored to it is another big region, the so-called stable interior, comprising the central provinces of Canada, the Intermountain United States, and the northern 2/3 of Mexico. This segment, like the Canadian Shield, is firmly based on primeval rock, but it subsided a little after it coalesced, so for millions of years at a time it was flooded by inland seas which deposited sediment, now layers of rock on top of its original foundations. That is about prehistoric North America. So you see, we move from universe to, we'll call this prehistoric North America. I'll just go NA, okay? It'll be a test at the end. All right, now, okay, we're still kind of thinking in cosmic terms. Now, what I like about this guy, oh God, thank you. Okay, no, okay. Okay, I hope this works. All right, so far, all right. You see the pattern? Oh, not quite yet, okay. Lower than the angels. Man is a singular creature. All right, I just want to say that being a filmmaker, I have a lot of these found films, collected films, educational films, and I have about 5 of this program, which is ultimately on TV, as you may know, and they're super delightful. And I cut them up too, and reuse them, recombinatory. But I could never match this guy's. I don't know what the word is, charisma. It's not charisma, but you know what I mean. Just imagine me as you know, Mr. Gronowski here. All right. Okay, man is a singular creature. He has a set of gifts which make him unique among the animals. It sounds like the other one, really. See? All right, okay. So that, unlike them, he is not a figure in the landscape. He is a shaper of the landscape. In body and in mind is the explorer of nature, the ubiquitous animal who did not find but made his home in every continent. It is reported that when the Spaniards arrived overland of the Pacific Ocean in 1769, the California Indians used to say that at full moon, the fish came and danced on those beaches. And it is true that there is a local variety of fish, the grunion, that comes up out of the water and lays its eggs above the normal high tide mark. The females bury themselves tail first in the sand, and males gyrate round them and fertilize the eggs as they are being laid. The full moon is important because it gives the time needed for the eggs to incubate undisturbed in the sand, 9 or 10 days, between these very high tides and the next ones that will wash the hatched fish out to the sea again. Okay, well, thank you, because that's a tip towards the West Coast, isn't it? Then with the California Indians. So we create kind of a Spanish style, and then you're right about that. We're here. Okay, the next one. What's the name of that one? The Cinnamon? All right. Okay. Power Leap. Why am I talking about Power Leap? Because it's May Day. If you haven't read C. Wright Mills, you dropped out of college in your sophomore year, because this is required. This is required, by the way, and I don't know if I should even give this to you, man. I should keep this for myself. But basically, we've had the universe, now we have the tectonic crust, we have a man on the landscape. Now, finally, we have an organization, a society. Happens to be class, don't you know? And if you don't, you can get this book, which might be over there on that shelf. The powers of ordinary men are, oh, these glasses. All right, finally hit my roommate's glasses. I'm going to have to cheat. Don't let it bother you guys. I'm still on 9. All right, The powers of ordinary men are circumscribed by the everyday worlds in which they live. Yet, even in the rounds of job, family, and neighborhood, they often seem driven by forces they can neither understand nor govern. Tell me about it. Right. Great changes are beyond their control, but affect their conduct and outlook nonetheless. The very framework of modern society confines them to projects not their own, but from every side such changes now press upon the men and women of the mass society, who accordingly feel that they are without purpose in an epoch in which they are without power. Wow. Well, there you go. That's C. Wright Mills. You just nailed it. Okay, so, oh man, power elite. All right, change glasses. Now, again, the theme of fragmentation, you see embodied here in the glasses. Now, why am I picking up Brave New World? Because, of course, a critique of class society from the Industrial Revolution on, and then a kind of a look towards, towards a kind of a future. But I particularly like this book. In fact, everyone's staying for an extra 2 hours, because I'm going to read every marginal note in this book. This took me a week. See, that took me a day to write these marginal notes in here for you guys. And I just couldn't believe how much content I could extract from this. But that's all a lie. I just found this book, which is part, of course, my program with found footage anyway. But I could read the marginal notes, and that would be fun, but it would be even more fragmented than what I'm doing. So I will just read, again, by our rule, the first paragraph. We'll go right here. All right. Oh. Chronic remorse. All right, I'm kind of remorseful right now. All right, try to do this. Chronic remorse, as all the moralists are agreed, is a most undesirable sentiment. If you have behaved badly, repent, make what amends you can, and address yourself to the task of behaving better next time. Wow, he wrote this? I can't believe it. All right. On no account brood over your wrongdoing. Rolling in the muck is not the best way of getting clean. Well, okay, and then just to the first footnote, which is art and ethics. So there you go. Thanks for the unknown person who, I should hand this out, but all right, it's just magnificent. All right, so back to the structure of the universe. Just spirals out an expanding centrifugal force. That will be the navel there, the big boom, bang. All right, so we're going to switch it out here. We switch it out here. We leave this for display. Okay, we'll put this in the next cycle, and we got to give some credit to Mr. Huxley, right? Brave New World. All right. Now, glasses. I hope this works out. I hope you guys are counting. And where are we now? Okay, we've seen the birth of the universe, the planet, now human beings, and an idea of utopia and dystopia. Finally, Herb Cain's Guide to San Francisco. Right? Now, what's the worth of this book? 99 cents or $99? Josh should know. All right, but don't steal that Whole Earth's book over there. Don't. The Whole Earth's catalog is super valuable, and I hurt myself getting that out of for some reason, the basement of my father's house. And we had, my father died, we had to sell the house. This is anecdotal, but someone had to go under. So it was the youngest son, me, who pulled that out and cut my knee very badly. But I saved it for Josh. Talk about Brave New World. There you go. All right, so anyway, now this is laughable, obviously, but charming in its own way. And for sure has a kind of a value. Especially here. Herb Cain, not that I ever met him, as I understand, this will be on the test, worked at the San Francisco Chronicle, right? Is that next door? Or is that next door? Isn't it Mission and Fifth, right? So this goes out to you, Herb. Sorry. We're still on the count. We're still on the count. All right, we're at number 6, I guess. All right, here we go. Oh, well. First, there's a little anagraph here, I think that's what they're called, by a guy named Will Irwin, which is the same name as Bill Irwin, who was a famous comedian, as you may know, a little bit after Herb's time. The gayest, lighthearted, and most pleasure-loving city of the Western continent. That's San Francisco, and that's where you are right now. So don't take it for granted. Welcome to one of the world's most unusual cities, a city of the world that gleams like a jewel on the western shore of America. Back to shores. All right, western shores. A compact, teeming metropolis of 800,000 people, I don't know if that's still correct, compressed into 44 square miles at the tip of a peninsula, surrounded on two sides by the greatest landlocked harbor in the world, and on the third by the boundless Pacific. In this comparatively small area, you'll find sharp reminders and soft hints of all the world's capitals. Hills like Rome, a skyscraper-studded financial district with the bustling urgency of Manhattan, a magnificent bay that ranks with Naples and rivals the glamour of Hong Kong's boulevards and bistros, flower stands, and winding streets, an ever-present hint of romance and excitement that spells Paris, and the culture and tradition, plus occasional creeping fog, of London. We'll leave it there, because the culture of London, the English language. So we're expanding out, and good old Herb comes to the rescue once again. Okay. Now we've come through millennia, more than that. Human beings, we formed ourselves. We find ourselves in the city. As I said, I used to live on Minna Street, not far from Herb himself. Okay, and we're going to it's more and more specific. We're spiraling in on my own project here, which is filmmaking, as you know. And so, but you may or may not be film followers or film fanatics, but I am. And I teach it, I make it, and we were very proud about 2 years ago to have this book come out by University of California Press, which is Radical Light, that is to say, filmmaking basically in the NorCal area. And so I'm included, honored to be, and my thing again being found footage ended up being called From Junk to Punk to Link. From junk to funk to punk to link. This calls on art history. This is certainly something that reverberates in these walls here. The idea of California funk art, I'm sure there's paintings and sculptures upstairs, and then ultimately this idea of making things out of a diverse, well-found material, trash and debris, and redeeming that moment of the ugly into something that's beautiful. And that's what found footage makers do. Among the rich and richly varied filmways of the Bay Area can be found that rather special practice known as the found footage film. There can be little doubt that this mode of making has enjoyed a particularly prominent place in the local tradition. But why? Why exactly? As a found footage filmmaker myself, I would like to float a few possible contributing factors and then sketch a necessarily partial chronology of this curious activity in these here parts. Even curiouser, how could the overt use of prefabricated industrial images flourish in a regional film culture that so vigorously valorizes the personal? So that's a rhetorical question. I don't know if I can answer it right now. I do, of course, in the article, but basically it's something you might want to think about. Even outside the film culture, how San Francisco priding itself on radical subjectivity and individual creativity could actually be the world center, really, of making films out of other people's work. So this has to do with this redemption, this love of diversity, and as I've been lecturing on. Okay, we're down to the wire now. There's only two more. So there's actually going to be a Radical Light, it's called, and I encourage you guys to get it. Though I think it's almost out of print now. This next one is recycled images. I don't think this is repetitive, because that was more of a general introduction to the whole found footage scene, and this is more of a quote that I gave this guy, William Weiss, he happens to be Canadian, when he was writing this catalog for the show in New York some years back. You guys got to help me on this now. All right. Here we go. This is going to be super brief because I want to have some questions answered. I had to fake it once more. All right. I think, oh no, I forget. We're going to cheat a little bit. All right. This brings us back to Mayday. There's a political edge to it when you take the images of the corporate media and turn them against themselves. So I have an affinity with that whole justification, that it's a kind of a political statement, that is found footage filmmaking. It's subversive. been political, and it's part of an underground movement. See, I want to bring back the term underground movement. They don't talk about the underground anymore. Well, we're talking about the art world. It's more formal, you know, it's not so subculture. I just introduced that in there. But they don't talk about underground anymore. They say, well, this is avant-garde, which is meaningless, even more so than experimental. I think the whole art world kind of been recuperated by the academy, pardon me. That's just a slip of the tongue there, okay, and it's lost its edge. All right, so anyway, that's my, talk about manifesto, that's my big argument for the seeing found footage films in a more political light as opposed to pure formal play. Now finally, we're bringing it on down home with the expanding universe like this, and number 9, voila, International Workers' Day. That's today, just so you know. All right, this is from the Challenge newspaper. It's a free copy that I picked up at the cafe yesterday. May Day is the international holiday celebrated by tens of millions of workers worldwide. It was born out of and honors the Chicago workers' historic struggle for the 8-hour day on May 1st, 1886. This launched a general strike that spread to 350,000 workers across the country. It's a day when workers around the globe march for the common demands, signifying international working class solidarity. In 1884, there was passed a resolution to make 8 hours a legal day's labor. Workers were forced to labor from sunup to sundown, up to 14 hours a day. The Chicago Central Labor Council then called for a general strike on May 1st, 1886 to demand the 8-hour day. Okay, it's good history. On that day, Chicago stood still as tens of thousands downed their tools and moved into the streets. No smoke curled from the tall chimneys of the factories and mills, reported one paper. On May 3rd, the cops murdered 6 strikers at the McCormick Reaper Works. The next day, hundreds of thousands marched in protest into Chicago's Haymarket Square. A bomb was thrown by a police agent. Well, that may or may not be true. I don't know, but it seems to be some murky details here, and maybe people a little bit know more about this than I do. All right, a bomb was thrown by a police agent. 4 workers were killed, 7 cops died, and 200 workers were wounded in what became known as the Haymarket Massacre. So I'm sorry I have to kind of end on a somber note, but that's why I'm celebrating May Day today. So, are there any questions?